problem even goes on to dispute resolution mechanisms, and we don't even see enough women arbitrators being represented. Now, this is the problem. Now, what are the reasons for this? Now, as I told you, that there are lesser representation of women, not just in the field of arbitration, but even before that, right? In the leadership, there is a leadership issue as well. So we don't generally see women being appointed either as president of a tribunal or managerial position, CEO of companies. So we have those underrepresentation over there. Apart from that, even at a lower level, we do see that there is an issue of sustainable participation of women in arbitration. Now, questions like, do younger women who are trying to find a career in the field of international arbitration feel flexible enough to be in this field? Right. So, as you know, this whole notion of women being caretakers of their families, and women being the gender who has to carry both the family pressure of the family as well as the career alongside. The problem of sustainable participation here arises as a question before women. So they start to ask themselves, would we find sufficient opportunities? Would we find flexible opportunities for ourselves? Would we be able to sustain in this field of arbitration with our families? Right? Would the environment be flexible, etc., etc., etc.? So this is a problem that women do face, not just at the leadership level, but also at the entrance level. So some women even do not think of entering the field of international commercial arbitration because they know that there might be a problem that they might face when they'll be going ahead in their career, when they might face this problem when they'll be having families. Right. So these are some of the problems, some of the questions that might be considered as a reason for the said underrepresentation of women. Now, there's also some kind of bias going on across the arena of international commercial arbitration. It's just not about the appointment bias, but it's also because of confidentiality. However, I'll come towards the point of confidentiality a bit later, and I'll be discussing appointment bias first. Now, as I told you, as I started the talk with asking ourselves the question, what do we think about when we hear the word business, company, right? Suited, booted men. So there is an image that clients want to be reflected in the arbitrators that they appoint as well. So they want someone to talk like them, someone who will sympathize with them, who will empathize with them, who will know their situation well. Now, as you know, that there is underrepresentation of women in the leadership roles. So obviously, if there will be a commercial dispute, of course, in an international level, there will be an involvement of biggies, big companies. So we can't even think of women being CEOs or women being the clients over there. So the people who will represent the companies will automatically be men most of the time. Now, there's the first place where we have to tackle underrepresentation of women. Nevertheless, now that we know that they mostly will be men, they'll want someone in the arbitration tribunal to be appointed from their side who will be in their own image, who will be like them, who will talk like them, who will be convinced by what they say. Now, of course, generally, even it's not a gender bias, to be honest, but it's just something that people have in the back of the mind. Men tend to think that if we appoint male arbitrators, they will be easy to talk out with and they'll be easy to persuade. So their chances of winning or having one arbitrator on their side will be secure. So what parties think of while they are giving names for appointment of arbitrators is that, I'll appoint this arbitrator, then this arbitrator will suggest some name along with the other party's arbitrator to be presented as a precedent for someone, or like they will nominate a president. And maybe if I'll appoint this arbitrator, if I will appoint a male arbitrator, he and the person who is appointed as an arbitrator from the other party, they together will appoint another male arbitrator, and there will be all men sitting working on the tribunal, and it will be easy to communicate with them, to persuade them, and they'll know that we are all men in this one room, and we are talking about the same thing, and we actually know what we are talking about. And that actually is something which Goldhaber says, this field of arbitration is pale, male, and stale. Right. So we can't even think of women being in the room along with all the men, sharing the same chair, sharing the equal room, or even if not, then the scenario of having a female arbitrator and a male client is something that's less of an people tend to incline less towards that, just because they want someone to reflect their thinking on the tribunal as well. So this is one another factor that leads to an underrepresentation of women. And where does it start? Where does this start with? This starts with underrepresentation of women in leadership roles, in managerial roles, in the companies itself. So that's where it starts. Now, another thing that all of you who have a background in arbitration, in international commercial arbitration, you must be knowing this confidentiality agreement, excuse me, that parties enter into. Now, it's rare that the decisions of the tribunals are published. Some of the institutions do publish the decisions, a few of its decisions, but because of this confidentiality agreement, we rarely come to know about all the arbitrators who are giving the decisions, and we barely come to know what is the quality of each arbitrator. Now, we do have websites and institutional websites as well that list the name of arbitrators with their CV, with their previous experiences of being appointed as arbitrators, but then we cannot know about the quality of the decisions that they gave because of this confidentiality issue. Now, even though we have arbitrators, all the previous experiences listed in the websites, the one problem that arises here is that women do not get chance of being reappointed. The reason being confidentiality, because the client do not know that this excellent decision that was given by so and so tribunal included a woman arbitrator as well. They don't even think of being inclined towards that woman arbitrator. This confidentiality issue, it has restricted the client from knowing the quantities, the qualities of the arbitrators. So how does it end? So it ends into a scenario where we have the male arbitrators who are really famous, or we can say the known quantities who are really famous, who have been reappointed again and again and again, because they were a part of a very hyped or very famous arbitration dispute that they resolved, and they got this big opportunity, and then they are being reappointed again and again and again, and their CV reflects 50 or 60 appointments, as opposed to that women arbitrators, even though they might have been a part of tribunal which gave an excellent decision, but that institution did not publish the decision, and thus she doesn't get the chance of being known all across the globe that, okay, so this lady arbitrator gave an excellent decision, and she has all the right to be reappointed, right? So again, a small factor over here is also that male arbitrators generally do not tend to give names of their female colleagues as a nomination, and they tend to be more inclusive in including their male colleagues. So that's a part of the problem as well, and that has to do something with not just confidentiality, but also with appointment bias and many other factors, the internal politics as well. However, there is also, as I talked earlier when I was starting the talk as well, that it's not just in the leadership role, it's not just that women are less represented in the leadership roles or in the managerial roles, but it also has to do with the problem that starts way earlier, which I talked about, the sustainability of women in this field, right? So the sustainability issue, whether or not this area will be flexible enough for me, it all starts not just at the entry level, but also right at the stage when women are choosing the subject in which they have to go ahead, in which they have to specialize. Now, we don't have direct evidences, but Miss Greenwood wrote a really good article over in her works, and she exclaimed that 65% of graduate trainees in the United Kingdom, they are women, but then only 11% of partners in the top 10 international arbitration teams are women. So we see, although we had 65% of graduate trainees, only 11% of them end up becoming partners of international arbitration teams. Now we are losing numbers over here. So where are we losing this? We are losing women through a leaky pipeline, quote, leaky pipeline, between the entry level positions and the leadership positions. So this leaky pipeline is through which we are losing women, and the reasons for this leaky pipeline is not just restricted to women not going ahead with their careers because of their families, but it also has to do with other factors like sexual harassment, or this whole a scenario of insecurities going inside the head of women as to whether I would be able to sustain myself in this field headed by men.